So I feel compelled to talk about the case of one Daniel Perry of Fort Hood, Texas, who was just convicted yesterday, I believe, in Austin, Texas, for in the death of a BLM protester back during the 2020 riots. Apparently, Mr. Perry was an Uber driver, and one of the BLM guys, who I believe was also a white male, if I remember correctly, don't quote me on that though, decided to point his AK into Mr. Perry's car, as he was there as an Uber driver trying to work in the middle of the night. That's something that people who don't make a lot of money, they have to work night shifts as Uber drivers because they don't make enough working during the day. So Mr. Perry, if I had to guess, is probably not very well off. He probably didn't want to be out driving around during a riot, but he probably needed the money to pay his rent. That's just my guess. I don't know his personal situation. But I know people who work nights as Uber drivers, and I don't know anyone who actually enjoys it. I don't know anyone who does that for fun. By contrast, however, I do know people who during 2020 went out and rioted with BLM for fun. Because it's just fun to be a part of a riot and to loot Walgreens and apparently point rifles in the face of Uber drivers. But it's not so fun when those Uber drivers then fear for their lives, understandably, because you're pointing a gun in their face, and they are not free to leave. They can't drive away. There's a crowd in front of them. It's not like they can speed away and get away from the man pointing the gun in their face. And apparently this Uber driver retaliated and shot the man who put a gun to his head. Now, if I knew someone, forgive me if I'm giving too many hypotheticals here, but I'm trying to just relate to the situation. I'm trying to put myself in somebody else's shoes. If I knew someone who had a gun pointed in their face, and they had the chance to draw their weapon and fire at the other guy first, and they shot and killed the guy who was pointing a gun in their face, I wouldn't call that person a murderer. I'd call them the luckiest bastard alive. I know that for most people that would be the most traumatic and trying experience of their life. Most people, at least I should hope, go through their lives experiencing not even one event that is as, if not more threatening, than having a gun put in your face, and then you being able to return fire and actually kill the other guy before he kills you. Using a gun in self-defense is not something that would ever be fun. It's not something that I think a normal, sane person would want to do. If you have to use a gun in self-defense, you are a victim even if you're not physically injured and you're able to, as this man did, walk away unscathed. Taking another person's life and knowing that they were likely about to take yours is not an experience that human beings, with hearts and souls, take lightly. Now, I can already hear the pushback. People saying, well, gee, if this guy with the AK who pointed the barrel of a gun in this Uber driver's face, if he intended to kill him, Mr. Perry, Daniel Perry, wouldn't have been able to shoot back and kill the other guy first, because he would have already been dead. Okay, you can make that case. Maybe the guy who was pointing the rifle in the other guy's face was just doing it for fun, and he wasn't actually going to blow his head off. But if you're the guy with the gun being pointed in your face, are you going to take that chance? Are you going to wait and see, hey, let's see if this guy actually blows my head off before I try and draw my weapon as a last ditch and defend myself? When someone points a gun in your face, I think the appropriate response, if you're armed, is to shoot first and ask questions later. And so barring some kind of evidence that didn't come out at this trial, that, Mr. Perry actually, knew this guy ahead of time, and he had threatened to kill him, and, so when he pulled up in his car, and this, to where this guy happened to be standing, the guy with the AK, the BLM rioter, actually was drawing his gun in self-defense and was pointing his gun at Mr. Perry because Perry had previously threatened to kill him. Barring something like that, there is no way that Daniel Perry is a murderer. There is no way that this was not self-defense. Telling someone that they should just tank a bullet to the head is not reasonable. It will never be reasonable, and there's no reasoning with someone who believes that, such as this prosecutor. The prosecutor's position is that Perry should have sat there in his car as he was overwhelmed by the mob of people who overtook the capital city of Texas, and he should have just let them kill him or do whatever they wanted. Maybe they wouldn't have killed him, maybe they would, but that's not his decision to make. Now, interestingly, even the dirtbag cops, who will plant heroin on you just so that they can meet an arrest quota and ruin your life, those very same cops said, actually, this guy did nothing wrong. They didn't even arrest him, I don't think. At the scene of the shooting, they determined, yeah, pretty clear this was self-defense. You're free to go, kid. Go home. And it was only later that the, of course, Soros-backed prosecutor in Austin decided, you know what, no, I hate guns, so I'm going to put this guy away so I can set the precedent that self-defense is not legal in Texas. And so that's all this is about. A Republican was attacked by a Democrat with a gun. The Republican defended himself with a gun. And Democrat prosecutors don't like when that happens. They want to send a message that Republicans do not have the right of self-defense. And they're willing to do this in one of the biggest red states in the country. You know why? Because these Soros-backed prosecutors, they actually believe in what they're doing. They're not intimidated by spineless little jellyfish, such as Greg Abbott, who can't even stand up straight. Greg Abbott can't stand for the national anthem, and you think he's going to stand up for your rights? And yet, it is that one man who holds the fate of Daniel Perry in his hands. The Republican governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, supposed, Second Amendment absolutist, right? This is Texas. This is guns are part of their state religion. Cowboys and frontiersmen, that's their heritage, right? They won their own independence, even separate from the American Revolution, With the rest of us, we have to trace our fighting spirit back to 1776. The Texans don't have to go that far. They just have to go back to, what was it, 1836? When they fought for their independence from Mexico? And yet now they've been so defanged that in 2020, a rioter can point a rifle in your face and you just have to sit there and wait for them to pull the trigger. You're not allowed to fight back at all. And Greg Abbott thinks that's okay. Apparently he does, because old Tucker asked him to come on the show and talk about the plight of Daniel Perry and what he's going to do to help him. And he said, sorry, I don't have time for that. Maybe you can call somebody else. I'm very busy, don't you know? And so that is Greg Abbott's way, Weasley way, as he always has, of saying, I'm going to do jack shit about this. Daniel Perry is going to spend the rest of his life in prison, and Greg Abbott couldn't care less. In fact, he thinks he's a murderer who deserves to be locked up. I mean, it's amazing. My perception in the last, 5 years, relatively speaking, between Texas and Florida, it's completely flipped. I used to think of, Florida as kind of tepid and squishy, as far as stuff like this goes. You never quite know. You can't expect our Republicans to be too strong, because we're a swing state and all that. And but Texas, they're the biggest, reddest state in the country, and they have all this, cowboy culture. And so, if anywhere, you should feel comfortable, in your rights and stuff like that, it's got to be Texas, right? Nope. We here in Florida, I think, are much freer. Here, when it comes to situations like this, we err on the side of favoring the accused, not the accuser. Even in cases where it seems like, maybe maybe the accused isn't the nicest guy in the world, and maybe the public would really like to see him in prison, but you know what? We're not going to put somebody away unless we're absolutely certain. You know what? No. You're a murderer, and you can't be allowed in the public space. In Texas, it's the opposite. They'll lock you up and throw away the key, even if 90% of the population wants you out of prison and the other 10% hasn't heard of you about your story yet. I mean, Texas is just a joke. Maybe if they decided to vote for different people, in primaries, maybe Texas could be better. But at the end of the day, they're just one of these completely feckless red states, like Mississippi or something, where all the Republicans, know they're going to win re-election every year, and they don't care. They don't have to fight, and they never have serious primary challenges. And nobody ever votes for the other candidate in the primaries. They just vote for whoever the name recognition is. And so ultimately, I blame Texas's voters for putting in a governor like Greg Abbott, who's allowed this charade to go on for as long as it has. Greg Abbott should have pardoned this guy as soon as he was indicted, because it was clear that this was not a good case. And here you have to remember, even in cases where people get acquitted, the process is the punishment. Kyle Rittenhouse should have never been prosecuted. If I were a governor and prosecutors were pulling this crap, trying to indict people for self-defense, I wouldn't let them put that person through a trial that was undeserved. Because if it's, if there's no question in mind and the evidence is completely clear, hey, this person's innocent, you're going to destroy them and bankrupt them by trying to put them through a trial. Our legal system is expensive. It's for rich people. You can't do that to a poor guy who has to work nights driving an Uber to pay for his living expenses. Someone who is that poor cannot afford to put up a real criminal defense, and that's probably why he got convicted. So that's all this really comes down to. Red state Republicans let blue cities, little tiny blue cities in their big red states, walk all over them. They don't care what these people do inside of these cities. Essentially, if you walk into a Democrat-controlled city as a Republican, even if you're in a red state, you lose all protection from your government. Whatever they do to you, you have to fend for yourself. That's what this says. This says not only should you not go to a blue state or you dumb if you're in a blue state, you can't live in a blue county or even travel to a blue county. This guy didn't live in Austin. Apparently lived in Fort Hood, and he was in Austin. But you're not allowed to cross the border into a blue county. You can't set foot there. What about these people who live in, red areas of blue counties? Or should they get screwed too? Like if you live in Alachua County, which is a very rural and very red, if you go up there, it looks like, hey, this would be a far right-wing county, isn't it? And then you realize, oh, there's a university there in the city. So that makes the whole county blue. I guess that means none of the right-wingers who live out in the hinterland, if they get prosecuted by a Soros DA, or we call them state's attorneys here, in Alachua County, or something like that on some BS charge like this, are we just supposed to, say, oh, well, bad luck, you were stupid, you set foot in Alachua County, you shouldn't have done that, you should have stayed in Marion or something, or Levy. By that logic, are we allowed in red counties to persecute whatever Democrats happen to set foot on our territory? Is that what we're going to do? I don't think that's what Greg Abbott has in mind. I think Greg Abbott has in mind we treat Democrats fairly on our turf, and we let them treat us however they want when we're on their turf. And no, even though I'm the governor of the whole state, I will not intervene in this local criminal matter in Austin, even though I'm right here in Austin myself. I, the governor, live, reside, work in Austin. That's the seat of the entire state government. No, when you come to Austin, you have no right to self-defense, let alone a Second Amendment right. That's not in the question here. This really isn't about guns, because the Democrat who was killed had a bigger gun. He had a so-called assault weapon that he was pointing in the face of this Uber driver. So I guess nobody here is arguing you don't have a right to a gun. They're just saying, hey, if you're a Republican and you come to our Democrat city, you have no right of self-defense. If we want to kill you, that's our business, and don't you dare interfere. So, with that said, Greg Abbott can go to hell. And I will see you folks back here, probably not tomorrow. Tomorrow's Easter, so no video tomorrow. But I'll be back Monday.